All right, ladies and gentlemen, how's it going? And welcome back to Weird with Webster. I am your host, Jackson Webster, and today we have a very special host, my dad. Dad, how's it going?
Fantastic. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, so it is St. Patrick's Day. So first of all, happy St. Patrick's Day. A lot going on in sports. We have the start of baseball. Baseball is back. We saw the Red Sox play the Twins earlier today. I think there are a few other games going on. I know the Diamondbacks are taking on the Rockies later. And there's also March Madness. So, Dad, who do you have winning March Madness?
March Madness. Well, I really only rooting for two teams, Villanova and Auburn. Sadly, I don't see either of them getting all the way to the Final Four. But at least they're in a different bracket. And I will be watching for those two. College basketball, it's a tougher watch for me now than it was when I was your age because most of the guys are there for a year or two and gone, so it's not so much about you get a chance to follow players as much as you just follow the teams.
All right, so we're going to get into some good history today, and Dad, I think you might remember this guy. He was a kicker who played for a plethora of teams, including the Chargers, the Saints, the Eagles, the Rams, the Oilers, and the Bills, Tom Dempsey. So do you know what makes Tom Dempsey interesting?
Well, obviously, for the longest time growing up, too, it was always that he had the longest kick in NFL history, and always that there was controversy surrounding the kick.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So he was also born with no toes, so he wore a cleat that was flat at the end where his toes were supposed to be, and that's where the controversy starts, and we'll get into that here in a minute. So in his first season in 1969 with the Saints in the NFL, because he was in the AFL with the Chargers, he went to the Pro Bowl and was voted first-team All-Pro. And keep in mind, he was technically an undrafted free agent too. So, moving from the AFL to the NFL, that merger that happened around then. And then in 1970, the Saints were terrible with just 2 wins the entire season. But Dempsey was the reason for one of them. He kicked a 63-yard field goal. That was the field goal that you were referring to beat the Detroit Lions 19-17. And it was a record that would stand for more than 40 years before it was broken by what player, Dad?
The player that broke it was Matt Prater.
That's correct. Yes. So I'll give you a trivia question point for that, and we'll have more trivia at the end of the show. The trivia at the end of the show is St. Patrick's Day related too. So before that, it was tied by Jason Elam, David Akers, and Sebastian Jankowski. Now Prater's record would be broken in 2021 when Justin Tucker hit a 66-yard game winner also against the Lions. Ironically, that game also ended 19-17. So 2 times that the longest record in NFL history was broken. It was a game-winning kick against the Lions to win 19-17. I thought that was pretty interesting. But Dempsey wasn't actually great, hitting around 50% of his field goals that season. He would join the Eagles the next season and play with them until 1974. And in his first season with the Birds, he had a league best percentage in field goals, but in 72 and 73, he was only hitting around 60% of his field goals. So then in 1974, Dempsey was playing without a contract because he was part of a smaller NFL strike, and he even tried convincing the grounds crew at Veterans Stadium to not convert the field over from baseball to football, which caused so much tension, not only with the Eagles, but with the Phillies as well. But overall, he was still on the team, which that was going to be threatened by him doing this. So then on September 23rd, 1974, Dempsey and the Eagles are playing their rival Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football in Week 2, and this is before you were even born, Dad. But the game was tied late and ultimately came down to Dempsey hitting a 45-yarder for the win. If he missed, he most likely would have been cut, but instead he drilled the game winner and they won 13-10, and Dempsey was signed to a contract and went on to play till 1979. The shoe that he wore cost around $200, and like you said, why do you think it generated controversy, Dad?
Well, because people always like to look at things from an unfair advantage. Another little-known fact about him, not only was he born without toes on his right foot, he had no fingers on his right hand. Mm-hmm. And people somehow misconstrued this as an advantage. The shoes today, it was $200 then. It's the equivalent of an almost $1,300 shoe today. One of my favorite quotes of his was when reporters asked him if he got an unfair advantage, he was quoted as saying, "Unfair, huh? How about you try kicking a 63-yard field goal to win it with 2 seconds left, and you're wearing a square shoe? And, oh, yeah, no toes or either." So there's controversy because people thought it was an advantage that he was able to kick with that specially designed shoe. But if you look at his career stats, from field goals, he was 159 of 258, which was 61%, which is, in today's game would be horrible. You'd be cut immediately if you were kicking 61%. So it's not like it was an advantage where he was able to do it, and it's not like, he has a long history of making 60-yard kicks. It was just the one perfect moment in time where it lined up and it went through. Interesting about the Saints that year, too, it was one of only 2 wins they had that year, and it took a 63-yard field goal to do it. Mm-hmm. It's amazing to me that 50 years later, only 2 people have kicked the ball further, the 64-yarder and the 66. Other people have kicked at 63. But with the advancement in everything in the last 50 years, that only 2 people have gone further, it's a pretty incredible record.
And then also Sports Science did an analysis on it and found that it actually increased the margin for error, making it even more impressive. So we were talking about that unfair advantage that people were talking about. It was actually the opposite, and he would kick with the front of his foot you'd see kindergartners do in soccer. You're a PE teacher. You see kindergartners kick with their front foot. You see me kick with my front foot whenever I'm playing in soccer.
Yeah, and if anyone listening to this goes and looks up a picture of it, you can clearly see it's not an advantage, obviously. And he didn't kick in the traditional sense that kickers do now in the soccer style from the side, so he was coming straight onto it. Interesting to note, too, the NFL, they made a rule in 77, formerly known as the Tom Dempsey rule, that any shoe that is worn by a player with an artificial limb on his kicking leg must have a kicking surface that conforms to that of a normal kicking shoe. That's got to be one of the most ridiculous and pathetic rules that any sport has ever created. Here you have a great man with a disability, and, how many people in the NFL are kicking with a disability? I mean, it's him as far as I know. No one else.
I don't know anyone else.
They specifically go ahead and make a rule so that if he had still been kicking at that point, he would have had to somehow wear a regular shoe, even though he didn't have any toes.
But the good part about that story is that he was ushered into that rule. The commissioner at the time, I believe his name was Pete Rozelle, was like, hey, man, don't worry about it. We'll usher you into this rule. So anyone before, it's kind of like with hockey helmet rules.
It's called grandfathering in rule, but it's still weak that they would actually do that. I mean, it's just, people thought if it was an advantage. If it was an advantage, you know what? Everybody would be kicking with that right now. But it's an incredible story of what he was able to overcome. And I don't know why people, for some reason, were jealous or mad the Saints won 2 games that year. And like I said, it's not like he was routinely kicking them, 60, 70 yards all the time. His field goal percentage was not up to standards. But, kicking wasn't an important part of the game then. Interesting that the NFL, one of the reasons they moved the goalpost back from the goal line to the end of the end zone was to discourage long field goal attempts. I don't know why they wanted to discourage, but obviously I wasn't old enough to remember anything in 1970. I wasn't even born yet. But to know why people were so mad, I can only imagine that for similar reasons today, people just get upset to get upset. But I don't really see why you could be mad at him for achieving what he did.
And he'd go on to play 2 more seasons with the Bills after he played with the Oilers in 77, who are now the Tennessee Titans. He'd play with the Bills, and then he retired, and he'd hold that record for 43 years before it was broken. And he's also in the Saints Hall of Fame. Now, he did unfortunately pass away in 2020 due to complications with COVID-19. But just an all-around great career and just a very inspiring man to look up to. And I'm sure he's inspired even more players today. I think one that immediately comes to mind is Shaquille Griffin with the Seattle Seahawks, who has, no fingers on his hand. So we don't see a lot of that in sports, and it's good to see that these people have opportunities to play the game that they love. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it's horrible he died early on in the pandemic. I guess he was also suffering from dementia, but through medical exams and scans, but that he did die, it looks like in March of 2020,
So
or April of 2020 from COVID.
So from one influential football player, I know you had a story that wraps up my story. So from one influential football player to an even greater influential football player, perhaps the greatest, most influential player of all time. I'm going to let you take this story, Dad, because you know all about it, much more than I do. You actually are a PE teacher, and not many people know that because they don't know you. But you have one assignment.
Sound logic there.
Yes, sound logic there. One assignment throughout the 4 or 5, 6 years that the kids are there now. And that's to write an essay on Pat Tillman. Can you tell us a little bit about why and how you've been doing that?
Yeah, I do a Pat Tillman essay every year with fourth graders. And I used to show a video, and now with the internet as it is, I allow just everyone to go do their own research. And we talk about, who Pat Tillman was. It's a 5-paragraph essay. What was the most amazing thing Pat did in your mind? We talk about, was he a positive role model or a negative role model? And then the last 2 paragraphs are my favorite. The fourth one is, who is someone in your life that reminds you of Pat and why? So, you get a lot of answers of people who have uncles or cousins or parents who are in the military or who played football, and that's one of my favorite paragraphs to read. They'll talk about their mom, or they'll mention a classmate. And the essay is just an opinion essay, but the kids do a really good job with it. And then the 5th paragraph is what is something you can do to make the world a better place, like Pat did. And I also enjoy reading, those 2 paragraphs the most, and seeing what people come up with in terms of what they can do. And some of them say, well, I could join the military, I could do this. But a lot of them are just like, I could pick up trash on the playground, I could help tutor my friend, I could help stop someone from being bullied. So I've done that essay for 16 years now, and I give out an award for the best essays in each class. And I really like to do it because I want Pat's memory to go forward. I don't go through the essay and nitpick everything. I just want them to be able to remember who he was 5, 10, 15 years from now. When I run into former students, sometimes I'll just ask them, hey, who was Pat Tillman? It's just someone's legacy who I don't want to go away, so I keep doing it through that essay. And speaking of which, Pat's Run is coming up. In 2005, when they did the first one, you and I, you were 3 at the time, did the very first Pat's Run, and I'm proud to say that we've done all 17, and this year will be year 18. Obviously, when you were that small, you were doing the kids' run, but you participated at Pat's Run, and this will be your 18th year and my 18th year, and my daughter's 16th year doing it as well. It's just a great event. I'm super excited that this year is going to be back in person. Obviously, it wasn't possible the last 2 years. We did the virtual run. So if you haven't signed up yet, it is April 23rd. The cost goes up every couple weeks, closer it gets, and I do believe they put a cap on it at around 28,000 people. That's what the cap used to be. I don't know if they've changed that. But if you haven't signed up for it, you haven't ever been a part of this event in person, I mean, it's just an amazing event in person to be a part of. That Pat was able to touch so many people, and now, so much later, all these years later, 18 years since he passed away, that he still inspires so many people from so many different walks of life to go out there and challenge themselves. You don't have to run it, you don't have to sprint it, you can walk it, you can push a baby stroller, you can do anything, but it's just about pushing those boundaries to make yourself feel uncomfortable. And not everyone goes out and runs 4.2 miles every day, and it's not easy for everyone to go run 4.2 miles. So it's definitely a solid challenge, and it's a great event for a great cause for the Pat Tillman Foundation. And I'm looking forward to it, getting back to it on April 23rd, getting back down there. And I hope it's going to be, I think the finish will be back on the 42-yard line again this year, since most of the construction to the football stadium has been completed.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, you usually start right by Sun Devil Stadium, and you run around close to the Van Buren, and then you finish back on the field at the 42-yard line. It's always fun to sprint down the 42-yard line with the cluster of people in that small little area and the players trying to get you.
It's hard to sprint because, man, it's just like you're just act like you gotta sprint, but you gotta sprint sideways, forward,
It's like you're
backwards.
dodging people on the field. It's like you're trying to run it back for a touchdown.
Well, everybody, once they come through that tunnel and you hit that daylight and that grass, you find, you might not have nothing left, but you find something in that moment to sprint to the finish line, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And the players are all there to give you a high five, and then they got.
Oh yeah, the players there high fiving you, and it's just a great event. I'm super excited, haven't been able to do it in person for 2 years. Like we just map it out around the neighborhood, but still wouldn't miss it. Great event. Proud that you and I have done it for all 18 years. I don't know that there's a ton of people left that have done all 18 years. That first year there was only 5,000 participants, and for a long time now there were up over 28,000, and then that doesn't count the volunteers and everybody else. So I believe it's the second biggest race in Arizona outside of the marathon in January.
Do you have a favorite moment from all of Pat's run? Something that you might have seen or done over the years?
Favorite moment? Well, it used to hurt less when I was younger. One of my favorite memories was just when my daughter, your sister Shay, just rushed us. I mean, she beat me by it's funny, as your kids grow up and, you're running slow with them, and then, then they're about staying even with you, and then all of a sudden, it's the roles are reversed, and she just right by me, just crushing me and waiting for me at the finish line when I used to wait for her. One of my favorite memories, though, one year when it was just the three of us and your mom wasn't able to make it that year, you guys were still small, and you guys were signed up to do the kids race, but she wasn't there, so I had to run with you by my side, and I had to, she was running. She was probably 6 or 7, so I'm holding her hand, and then, she's exhausted, so then I got to throw her up on my shoulders, so I'm trying to run half mile with her on my shoulders and then putting her down and then trying to get you to keep up, and I think it ended up taking us, an hour and 10 minutes, but it wasn't about the time. It was about, we were all going to finish whether we had to walk or I had to carry you or pull Shay to the finish line. But now it's like pretty soon she's going to be pulling me to the finish line.
She's gone from that to destroying both of us, and I'll even admit that. She
does. She destroys us.
Oh, both of us. So
it's just one of those things, over 18 years. The first year I can still remember being there and then running, and then you doing the .42, and the picture I have just holding you when you're 3. And, to go all these years later, and obviously I got my master's degree in ASU, and now, proud that you're at ASU, and to get to go out there and experience it and be part of it, it's just it's a fantastic event, and it really is family-oriented, too, with all the stuff that you can do before and after out in the parking lot, too.
And it's cool, too, because this will be technically my first year as an ASU student that I've gotten to run it there. So that's something that I'm looking forward to because, obviously we couldn't run it there last year. But, all the times that we've been there, meeting or seeing all the mascots, like the gorilla is always there, and Big Red with the Cardinals, Sparky always kicks it off, too.
Obviously, another favorite memory, too, was 2000, was Pat's run 7 or 8. Was when we actually got to meet Marie Tillman, which was a fantastic, have the opportunity to meet her. I believe that was Pat's run 7 in 2011, where she was near the finish line, and we got to talk to her for a little bit, and I still have that picture of you with her. So that was one of my absolute favorite memories, too, getting that opportunity to meet his wife.
So once again, do you have that date for us again so people out there listening can register, and where else can they register for?
April 23rd. It's obviously a Saturday. The race starts at 7. It warms up pretty quick. I mean, if you're in the last corral, you won't go through the start until about 8:15.
Oh, yeah.
But you can just sign up on patsrun.com. All the links will be there. You can look up Pat Tillman Foundation. And all the money goes to the Tillman Scholars, just ordinary people doing great things in the world. There's a lot of that stuff you can research on the website as well. But I don't know if it's sold out yet. I know that it's getting close to selling out, and we're just basically, a little over a month away. So if you're looking for something to challenge yourself or just a way to honor a great human being, sign up for it.
All right, awesome. And so with that, we're going to move on to this day in sports history. Kind of a wacky one here. On this date, 1955, after Maurice Richard is suspended for the remainder of the season, riots would break out in Montreal. 37 people are injured and over 100 are arrested. The following morning, Richard goes on the radio to ask citizens to stop vandalizing the city, and this is known as the Richard riots. Dad, what do you know about the Richard riots?
Goodness, I don't know anything about that. What day in history was that again? What year?
This is 1955.
Yeah, 1955. I don't know anything of that, and I haven't come across that. But what was he actually suspended for?
I'm pretty sure cross-checked someone. I don't remember really the full
well,
story.
He was one of the all-time greats in hockey at that point. I mean,
for
I think
sure.
He obviously, when he retired, was obviously the most goals and probably the most points. He was unstoppable. Obviously, during that time, no one wore any kind of really protective equipment whatsoever. So I'm sure whatever he did was pretty filthy if they suspended him. And for people to riot like that, never a good thing. But,
so essentially, they were just hooking and slashing and holding him, and then he kind of just retaliated for all that. But it got ugly over there in Montreal. I mean, they're obviously very passionate about their hockey, and it says about $100,000 in property damage over the riots before he went on the radio to tell him to stop.
Well, kudos to him for getting him on there to stop. I'm sure he felt bad about whatever happened, but I'm sure he felt that he was justified in his actions. It's one of those things in sports, unfortunately, sometimes things get out of hand. But in 1955, yeah, I don't remember it. But speaking of hockey, can we divert over to the Coyotes and the fact that they're now going to be playing in the ASU Stadium with only 5,000 seats? I ask you, how is that going to work?
It is going to be interesting. We will see how ticket prices look. They'll probably be the ticket prices of the Suns, most likely, and probably even higher than that.
You're playing in a stadium now that's roughly close to 20. I looked at, even if I just look up the Coyotes' attendance figures.
It's like 11,000.
Yeah, it's 9 to 11, depending on the day of the week. I mean, obviously at 5,000 you're going to sell out. I don't know if those 5,000 that goes to all season ticket holders, and then there's nothing left for people to buy single game tickets. So while I'm excited that they're not leaving, obviously, although I still worry about that, it's been the on again off again conversation for almost the last 20 years. But I don't know how 5,000 seats is going to work, and I don't know that there's ever been a professional franchise that's played in such a small venue. And I don't know, by the way, if they've even got the approval to build the new one or where it's going to be. My goodness, I've heard every rumor of where it's going to be for the last 20 years, and it never happened. So
I don't think they have approval to put it anywhere yet. I know that there have been proposals, but there has been nothing that has really come out yet. So we will see where that ultimately leads them. But it is definitely concerning. And another thing is, they're probably going to lose some of those seats to the camera wells, because they got to put more cameras in that arena than you'd have for a college hockey game. So
yeah, I don't know how it's going to work. Glad that it's going to be closer, obviously. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to have the Cardinal Stadium all the way out there, because people only go out 8 to 10 times a year for games, but to go out 41 times a year when it's not centrally located at all, it's still massively frustrating too that the Suns cannot come to some sort of agreement, even though it's not a hockey, it's not a stadium that's built for hockey.
No. Every
major city that has both hockey and basketball share the facility, so it's not like it's a foreign concept that they couldn't figure out. And the Coyotes obviously did play there with the Suns before Robert Sarver owned the team, but now they obviously, I know there was some sightline issues, but come on, it's much better for them to be playing there than for them to be playing in a 5,000-seat stadium, which isn't going to accommodate people, which might make ticket prices go insane. But even if the ticket prices are jacked up, it's still, think about, even if they're only pulling 10,000 people a game, you're losing 5,000. You can't double your prices, but you're losing 5,000-plus people a game that would come in, and not only the ticket sale prices, but the merchandise pricing and the food and drink pricing, I don't know how they stay. I don't know how they sustain and can be viable. And I still worry that they're going to get sold to someone else because someone else will come in, another big city that will instantly give them a better opportunity. You know, we can't. The number of years the Coyotes have been good since they've been here in, 96? So it's like 25,
They're
20
very few.
years. 3 or 4. I know they had
Yeah.
a decent run when they first, they got here while they were still playing at the old America West Arena. And I know in 2012 they were good, but it's like, how can you? It's the famous saying, how can you rebuild when you were never good in the first place? But all I ever hear is they're rebuilding, they're rebuilding, they're rebuilding.
Yep. So I'll cut you off right there because we do have to get to our trivia question. We got to be out of here by 2:27. So the trivia question today is, which MLB team was the first to wear St. Patrick's Day uniforms, and what year was it?
Oh, my gosh. First to wear St. So this is spring training, obviously.
Yes.
Now, for St. Patrick's, I always remember when I was a kid, I had this Mike Schmidt card in the Phillies, and he was always wearing the green hat and the green jersey, and it was always one of my favorite cards, but they would wear it once. First ever, I'm going to just make a random guess here, the White Sox.
That is incorrect, so I will tweet it out. I know you don't have a Twitter, but I will tweet it out, and we'll see if anyone can get the right answer. This is a controversial answer, so good luck, everyone. And, Dad, thank you very much for joining me today, and we'll see you all next week.
All right, appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, Jackson Webster here, local Blaze Radio specialty show hoster and sports enthusiast. Are you bored from 2 to 2:30 every Thursday? Are you constantly wondering why there's no shows about sports history and facts that you can use in your articles and broadcasts? Well, you're in luck. There is Weird with Webster. Finally, there's a show that covers all your sports history needs, from the 1925 Chicago Cardinals to the time an MLB pitcher got struck by lightning. Learn the stories that will make you the historian in the newsroom. This semester, learn sports history with Webster. So tune in to BlazeRadioOnline.com on Thursdays from 2 to 2:30. See you then.